Have you ever seen that some of the nicest people you've ever known are also some of the most worn out people? The ones who always come through, who always grin, who always say yes when you need help. But if you watch closely enough, if you really look carefully, you can notice the tiredness in their eyes. You can feel that somewhere behind that niceness is something more, something weightier, maybe even something scarier. We often think of kindness as this clean, simple, good thing. We tell kids to be nice. We look up to kindness in leaders. We judge our own goodness by how much caring we can give, but kindness, like everything else in this confusing world, has a hidden side. And when you ignore that hidden side, when you act like it doesn't exist, kindness itself can change into something harmful. It begins in small ways. A kid figures out that being nice, being easy to get along with, gets them love. When they push their own wants aside to make others happy, they get rewarded with smiles, compliments, maybe even warmth they didn't get before. Over time, this connection buries itself deep inside their body system. Kindness becomes staying safe, and the older they grow, the tougher it gets to separate who they really are from what others want them to be. They turn into the dependable one, the good person, the friend who never complains. But here's what's true. When kindness is pushed, when it is controlled by fear of being rejected or a desperate need to be wanted, it's no longer real kindness. It turns into a disguise, and disguises, when worn too long, begin to choke the person underneath them. Think about the people in your life who are endlessly nice. They'll hear about your troubles for hours. They'll help you when you move. They'll give money they don't have. They'll give up their own rest just to make sure you're okay. At first, it seems wonderful, even like a saint. But if you've ever been that person, if you've played that part, you understand the truth. Behind every act of giving yourself up is a silent anger, a voice that says, "What about me?" But that voice is often shut down because kindness, especially never-ending kindness, comes with an unspoken rule. You're not allowed to put yourself first. Mind scientists have looked at this happening, and it has a name: compassion fatigue. It explains what happens when someone gives so much of their caring, so much of their attention, that they finally run empty. Hospital workers feel it, teachers feel it, even parents feel it. But it's not only about jobs. Regular people, those who think of themselves as kind souls, are in danger too. Research shows that people who always put others before themselves report higher amounts of worry, sadness, and even body health troubles compared to those who keep balance. Kindness, when not controlled, becomes self-erasing, and that's the scary side. Kindness without limits is not kindness at all. It turns into a gentle form of self-hurting. It's like watering every plant in the garden except your own roots. In the end, the gardener falls down and the whole garden dies with them. But here's the more worrying part. Sometimes kindness itself turns into a weapon. And I don't mean in the clear way, like someone acting nice to trick others. I mean the softer, more unconscious way. When you are known as the kind one, people begin to expect it. They count on it. They build their actions around it. And without even knowing it, your kindness teaches others that your needs come second, that your feelings can be changed. Over time, people stop even asking what you want because they think you'll always adjust to them. The kind person ends up teaching the world to overlook them. This creates a puzzle. The nicer you are, the more unseen you become. And being unseen is not calmness. It's being alone, dressed up in politeness. Now, none of this means that kindness is wrong. Far from it. Real kindness is one of the most lovely forces in the world, but there's a difference between kindness that pours from having plenty and kindness that drips from being empty. One fixes, the other wears away. One comes from love, the other from fear. Let's look at some facts. In a research paper printed in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, researchers discovered that people who have trouble saying no, often those who think of themselves as kind and easygoing, are way more likely to feel burned out. Another study from the University of Berkeley showed that helpful behavior makes well-being better, but only when it is chosen freely and real. When kindness is done out of guilt, duty, or fear of letting others down, it has the opposite result, actually making happiness lower and making stress higher. And yet so many of us get stuck in this loop. We don't want to let anyone down, so we keep saying yes. We don't want to be seen as greedy, so we keep giving. We don't want to lose love, so we keep giving up things. But the price of this never-ending kindness is huge. Slowly, you start to lose sight of yourself. You don't even know what you want anymore because your whole identity has been built around helping others. You become a stranger in your own body, and here's where the monster inside comes in. Because when you push down your needs, when you deny your anger, when you bury your limits in the name of kindness, those feelings don't vanish. They pile up in the shadows, they spoil, and in the end they come out in ways you can't control. Maybe it's snapping at someone you love for something tiny. Maybe it's secretly mean comments, anger that leaks out in small ways. Or maybe it's even darker, years of held back feelings exploding all at once, leaving you shocked at the person you've turned into. We like to think that kindness protects us from darkness, but really, kindness without honesty creates the perfect growing place for it. Because every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you smile when you want to cry, every time you hold back your truth to make someone else comfortable, you are not being kind. You are leaving yourself behind, and leaving always has results. Now, let's be real. Why do we do this? Why do kind people have so much trouble with limits? The answer is in our culture. From a young age, many of us are taught to believe that kindness equals being worthy, that being easygoing is safer than being real, that love is earned by what we give, not by who we are. Children who grow up in places where love has conditions, where warmth depends on how you act, obedience, or giving yourself up often carry this belief into being grown-ups. They become adults who mix up people-pleasing with kindness, but true kindness does not erase the self. True kindness includes the self. If your kindness is costing you your brain health, your happiness, your energy, then it's not kindness anymore. It's self-ignoring dressed as goodness. And this is where the teaching comes in. Brain science tells us that the brain has something called the mirror neuron system. It's what lets us feel empathy. When you see someone hurting, your brain lights up as if you are hurting too. That's why kindness feels so natural to us as humans. We are built to connect. But here's the problem. Mirror neurons don't tell the difference between healthy empathy and harmful empathy. If you constantly expose yourself to others, hurting without any limits, your brain basically floods itself with stress signals. Over time, this leads to always-on stress responses, body defense system issues, and feeling exhaustion. In other words, your brain is not built for endless, limitless kindness. It's built for balanced connection. So the scary side of kindness is not that kindness itself is bad. It's that kindness can be twisted by fear, by teaching, by culture, by our own unhealed hurts into something that looks noble on the surface, but slowly eats us alive inside. And when that happens, the very thing we thought was our biggest strength becomes the very thing that breaks us. Now, let's stop and think here. If you've ever felt this, the tiredness, the anger, the sense of being invisible, even though everyone calls you so kind, you're not alone, you're not broken, you're not damaged. What you're feeling is the natural result of a world that doesn't teach us how to balance giving with protecting ourselves. It's the monster inside, not because you're bad, but because hidden truths eventually demand to be seen. And this brings us to the real question. How do we accept kindness without letting it destroy us? How do we stay caring without turning into people who suffer? How do we love others without leaving ourselves behind? So how do we do it? How do we accept kindness in a way that fixes instead of hurts? The answer is in one simple but deeply uncomfortable truth. Kindness must start with you. Not in a selfish ignore everyone else kind of way, but in the sense that if your kindness doesn't include yourself, then it isn't truly kindness at all. It's acting, and acting eventually falls apart. Think of it like this. If you've ever flown on an airplane, you know the safety instructions. In an emergency, put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. At first look, that advice feels almost wrong, almost unnatural. Why would I not help my child or my loved one first? But the thinking is clear. If you pass out from lack of oxygen, you can't help anyone. The same rule applies to kindness. If you ignore your own needs, your own rest, your own well-being, your ability to truly care for others eventually chokes. This is where limits enter the picture, and limits for many kind people feel scary. Limits feel like rejection. They feel like selfishness. They feel like shutting people out. But really, limits are the cleanest form of honesty. A limit says, this is what I can give and this is what I cannot. It says, my love is real, but it cannot exist if I'm empty. It says, I care enough to show you my limits, because without them, my care will rot into anger. Mind scientists describe limits as the invisible lines that explain where you end and where another person starts. Without those lines, relationships blur into depending too much, tricking, or silent hurting. With them, relationships become clear, equal, and based in respect. In fact, research shows that people who set healthy limits often have deeper, more meaningful relationships because their kindness comes from choosing, not being forced. And here's another fact, people who respect their own limits are actually seen as more trustworthy. Why? Because when they say yes, you know they mean it. Their kindness isn't pushed, it's real, and being real is powerful. But here's the challenge. Setting limits isn't just about saying no to others, it's about saying yes to yourself. And that can feel uncomfortable if you've spent your whole life thinking worth equals selflessness. It can feel like you're betraying the very identity that people admire you for. You might even lose relationships in the process. Some people won't like it when you stop stretching yourself too thin. Some will push back, blame you for changing, maybe even pull away from you. And that's painful. But it's also necessary because relationships built on the expectation of endless giving were never truly balanced in the first place. Now, let's dig a little deeper into the mind science. There's an idea known as pathological altruism. It explains what happens when the wish to help actually causes harm either to the giver or the receiver. For example, when someone gives up their health to care for others, or when constant rescuing stops the other person from ever learning to be independent. Pathological altruism looks like kindness, but it creates depending, guilt, and tiredness. It is quite literally kindness gone wrong. This connects to something even bigger, the cultural story of the good person. Many societies put kindness on a pedestal as the highest goodness, but often in a way that quietly encourages self-erasing. Think about how often we hear phrases like, "She's such a good girl, she never causes trouble," or "He's such a nice guy, he always helps everyone." Hidden in those compliments is a dangerous guess that goodness means never making demands, never saying no, never disturbing the peace. But real goodness is not about erasing yourself. It's about showing up as your full real self and still picking compassion. When kindness comes from being real, it frees. When it comes from fear, it traps. So what can you do in real ways to shift from trapped kindness to freed kindness? Here are some plans, not as quick fixes, but as lifelong practices. First, practice the pause. When someone asks something of you, don't right away say yes. Take a breath. Give yourself space to check in with your own needs. Ask, do I have the energy for this? Do I want to do this? Is this request lined up with my values? Even a few seconds of thinking can save you from automatic people-pleasing. Second, learn the power of gentle no's. A no doesn't have to be mean, it can be caring and kind. I care about you, but I can't take this on right now. Or, I'd love to help, but I don't have the ability. The world won't fall apart if you say no. In fact, the more honest you are, the more people will respect your yes. Third, rethink your worth. Your value is not decided by how much you give away. Your value is built in. You existed before anyone needed you, before you learned to act kind to survive. You are worthy of love even when you say no, even when you rest, even when you take nothing on your shoulders. Fourth, take care of your own garden. Fill yourself with the things that feed you. Friendships that feed your soul, creative activities, moments of stillness. When you live from having plenty rather than having nothing, kindness flows naturally. It's not pushed, it's not draining, it becomes a gift rather than a trade. And fifth, allow yourself to feel the harder feelings, anger, frustration, sadness. These are not enemies of kindness. They are signals. They tell you when your limits are being crossed, when your needs are being ignored. If you push them down, they turn into the monster inside. But if you accept them, if you listen, they become guides that point you toward balance. Let's return to the idea of disguises. For many people, kindness has become a lifelong disguise. The smile you wear to cover the tiredness, the yes you give to avoid fighting, the generosity you act out to prove your worth. But disguises are heavy, and the longer you wear them, the harder it becomes to remember what your own face looks like. The real journey is not to throw away kindness, but to take off the disguise and let kindness come from the real you. The you that can say yes and no with equal honesty, the you that is kind without disappearing. There is an old saying, if you want to know who you truly are, look at how you treat yourself when no one is watching. That's where real kindness starts. Not in the approval of others, not in the praise of being the nice one, but in the quiet choices you make for your own well-being. Do you rest when you're tired? Do you forgive yourself when you fail? Do you speak to yourself with caring? If not, then your kindness to others is built on a shaky foundation. The strange part is this: when you treat yourself with true kindness, your kindness toward others becomes more powerful, not less, because it comes from overflow, not running dry. It inspires rather than tires out. It invites others to rise with you instead of lean on you endlessly. And maybe that's the final lesson here. The scary side of kindness isn't about rejecting kindness. It's about changing it from a disguise into a mirror, from being forced into choosing, from survival into love. So the next time someone tells you that you're so kind, stop for a moment. Ask yourself, is this kindness coming from fear or from freedom? From tiredness or from having plenty? From the disguise or from the real me? The answer to that question will tell you more about yourself than any compliment ever could, because at the end of the day, the monster inside kind people is not their anger, not their limits, not their boundaries. The real monster is self-ignoring, and once you face it, once you put down the disguise, you'll discover that your kindness doesn't disappear. It only grows stronger, sharper, more glowing. It becomes the kind of kindness that doesn't just keep others alive, but keeps you alive too. And maybe that's the ultimate kindness, to live fully as yourself without erasing, without acting, without apologizing. To show the world that compassion doesn't mean self-erasing, it means truth. That's the kind of kindness the world needs most. Not endless yeses, not silent hurting, but the courage to love without losing yourself.